was gonna review a different game, but I got shown this for 270 Robux and impulse bought it. When you get paid in Robux for commissions, you tend to have some spending cash, and I need a tax write-off. This is a business expense, right? Neon Knights is a co-op RPG with roguelike elements according to the description. It was publicly released in late November of 2022 and was developed by Blockage, with some monetary encouragement by the Roblox Corporation. I personally find the game quite fun, refreshing even. You can definitely tell the team was well funded with how damn good it looks. The gameplay isn't necessarily refreshing, but I find the art style, building, and modeling quite appealing. It's a breath of fresh air to someone like me. No comment on the sound design though, it's not bad, it's just unremarkable. Why a heavy blade cutting into a large robot makes the same noise as a light blade is unknown to me and those above. The original soundtrack is pretty good. It's not publicly released, so this video won't contain much, if any of it, outside the title screen. The dashing and the way the game's movement feels reminds me of Fury. Banger of a game. It's not exact though, since I don't get to parry everything and dunk on my enemies as hard. Still like how it feels like Fury though. It's a game where the laws of robotics no longer apply, as evident by the constant attempted murder. You can make them conform with your two friends, Smith and Wesson. They can't harm a human or let a human come to harm if they're all dead. I don't want to get ahead of myself though, let's get to gameplay. I can't be bothered to piece together the lore of the game. This is an incorrect review and not an incorrect summary. Ooh, that was long-winded. Let's start with the basic gameplay loop of the game. You play as a knight, someone who goes out and kills a bunch of robots. You go into the wall or something. I'll pay attention to the story. You shoot with left click, stab with right click or V, move like every game ever, dodge with spacebar, dash by running and dodging, and sprint with shift. There are 7 total areas to my knowledge if you count the last area and don't count the dream. They increase in difficulty the deeper you get. By completing areas, opening chests, and killing enemies, you get randomly generated weapons to more efficiently streamline making the enemy conform to the first law of robotics. It's not a Jericho or a foul, but it'll do for my tastes. There's a rarity scale that determines how good a weapon is. It goes scrap, basic, common, uncommon, unique, rare, pristine, experimental, legendary, alpha, omega. The weapons range from machine guns, sniper rifles, pistols, shotguns, and weird in-between ones depending on RNG. Gotten a railgun shotgun which works as a short-range sniper before. Weapons like machine guns are good for ad-clear and constant damage on bosses. Snipers excel in poking the enemy at long range with high damage and typically a lower fire rate. Shotguns are close range, tend to do heavy damage to ads, and are good for big enemies because it's spread. Pistols just kinda outclass unless it's a really good roll. There's also gear. These range from grenades, swords, to some things in between. The Ball Buddy gives you buffs, and there are 2 disciplines of the Light Blade, which vary your moveset. This also applies to other melee weapons, but I haven't checked personally. Grenades are on a cooldown with unlimited ammo, and are good for clearing out a cluster of enemies or doing big damage to one. Every weapon or piece of gear comes with quirks, intrinsic perks that make a weapon better or worse. The right combination of them with good stats, or blessing from Lord Jericho himself, can make a weapon break the game. I'm not the person to ask on the tier list or whatever though. Consult the help documents in the Discord server. The stats are also randomized, which can lead to funny things like my fully automatic sniper that had a fire rate of 2.5 until I decreased it at the Forge for more damage and reload. That's also an important part of the weapons, the Forge. The Forge is run by Holiday, my literally me character, in Diamond City. It's the hub world between dives. She's effectively a mad scientist trying to understand Flux and doesn't like knights. She's also the mascot for Snow Day. I'll discuss what that is when I get to the Holiday update. There are other vendors in the town. The Moko Depot is where you sell weapons for carbon, or purchase currency with Robux. Stein is where you get your weapon crates. There are some quirks exclusive to crates here, like the glitch crates, Diamond City crates, and Stein crates. The stylist is where you go to get clothes that give you skills. It just gives you another point in that skill, allowing you to go above maximum. My character has feminine hair because it gives him another skill in sustain. The statistical advantage pipeline begins here. Now that I've mentioned skills, I have to talk about that. There's a skill tree in this game. I'm not going to explain every perk, I'm just going to say some of the perks I like. Fast Learner gives you more XP. Pack Rat is always funny. Having more inventory means being a loot goblin. First Aid is good. More health from pickups is always appreciated. Breather is good and basically mandatory since it's an extra stamina charge. Do not make the mistake of getting Rally Runner like I did. It's really situational and just kinda not worth it. Light-footed is a nice skill. Stack speed boost. Vassal and Interest are good skills. Roll creds during dives is always appreciated. Resistant casing is good. Free ammo drops. You can research in the Discord or check the wiki if you want to know about all the skills. The levels are semi-randomly generated, it's not like I noticed anyways. Midway through the level you get to a vendor who sells buff items. There's no limit on these to my knowledge, and they can hard carry your run. My personal favorite is the Doctor's Tools, since it can trivialize bosses if you dodge. There's also optional pillars you can touch to increase the difficulty in exchange for higher rewards, or a damage buff in exchange for your HP. Within the levels there are vending machines that sell buff items, ammo, medical supplies, weapons, perk circuit machines. There's also free ammo boxes and medkits scattered around the levels. The Moko buff items from vending machines can stack, by the way, it's just diminishing returns. There's also some special vendors like Citria, who heals you instead of selling items. And Jericho. Jericho is this game's version of RNGesus, and changes your gun stats for a fee. It does allow for some funny guns that may or may have not broken the balancing. You must have percolate engineering. You got nerfed with the holiday update though. I'll be discussing the 5 main levels since I'm most familiar with those. The shallows will be mentioned, I just don't have as much footage of it. I'll talk about special dives at the end of this section. Levels are where you commit your preemptive self-defense for loot and XP. Within levels, the player collects credits, a currency exclusive to dives that resets every time. It's used to purchase items from vendors and use vending machines. In the shallows and D5, enemies will also drop flux. As mentioned before, that's used for reforging weapons. D1 is the outer wall. You beat up construction robots and shoot conveniently placed red barrels. The weapons that drop here can have the intrinsic modifier nail gun. Every level has its own specific perks to its location. For example, Midnight Lounge has Honor, Vertigo has Rave, D1 has Saw, Nail Gun, and some others. Since the first area, most of the loot will be mid, at your level, and lower rarity. Halfway through, you're gonna meet Fee, who people have developed an unhealthy obsession with. Rems are pretty good all around. I recommend getting the health buff or the shield. The boss of the area is the Constructor. He's just a big construction robot who shoots at you with his nail gun and charges with the pistons on. There's also a stomp attack, but it's telegraphed and easy to dodge. My buddy Cameron was able to download his moveset after a few runs, so it's not too hard. D2 is Transit, not to be confused with Transit from God Zombies. They still have Hellhounds, but instead of every 5 waves and being threatening, the boss and Dynamics dogs are barely a challenge. Other enemies include poles and sentient boxes, which are deadlier than you expect. They may not kill you, but you're gonna lose your no-hit challenge. The boxes also like to have bugged hitboxes when stunned. Moko is the vendor for this area. He actually has some pretty good items. I recommend the Motang for damage resistance and Corn for more health. The arenas are bigger than before and a bit more annoying. Having to deal with multiple big enemies while having a rocket shot at you isn't exactly a fun experience. That's mainly limited to the special dives in the Metro though. The boss is just a big cube. It'll spawn boss and Dynamics dogs or the box that fire rockets. If you have a good machine gun, you can sit at medium range and chip away while dodging the very telegraphed attacks. D3 is Vertigo Highrise. I don't like this map. The room design isn't bad or anything, it's just that I don't like the enemies. The roulette enemies and trendsetters are painful. Trendsetters fill your screen with ads, and the roulette wheels force you to move forward or get hit. Multiple of them force you to watch your step constantly when fighting the ads. The Amazon drone head enemies are an honorable mention because a machine gun makes quick work of them. The rooms are more open, but this means more ads to deal with. You can end up fighting 3 big enemies at a time in some rooms. The vendor for this area is the Doctor, and their pharmacist Jericho. I already talked about RNGesus though. The Doctor's tools and medical guide are top tier. Doctor's tools make melee only for D4 viable and fun. The medical guide adds a 50% chance to get healed when opening chest and boxes. Boss for this area is just kinda the lady robot from WALL-E, who's pretty unremarkable and easier than the level itself. The Midnight Lounge is easily cooler, more engaging, and better balanced than Vertigo Highrise. I find it on the easier side because of a little game called Fury, which I don't plan on reviewing, but it's not off the table. I mentioned it in the intro, and this level is why. D4 consists of mini bosses and then the area boss. You've got the Edge from Fury, complete with a close range only circle that you can attack them in. The Fear from Metal Gear Solid 3, who shoots at you from a tightrope and throws down area denial attacks. You got a chunky robot with regenerating shields it attacks with. Unremarkable fight. Seriously though, is this a Fury reference? Can Dev please confirm? It's literally a series of mini bosses with a close range specific boss, a boss with rotating shields that you can break down, I'm gonna skip describing the other mini-bosses because they're honestly unremarkable. They appear in random order and you don't encounter all of them in a normal run without shrines. Shrines are the pillars of D4. They optionally add an additional mini-boss to each room, and if activated they spawn mini-bosses right after the area boss's first phase. The more shrines you interact with, the bigger the reward at the end of the level. Right before the area boss, you can speak to Citria, the vendor for the area. Instead of buff items, you pay to use the hot springs. The hot springs heal 100 health. The area boss of D4 is unremarkable enough for me to not remember its name. It has 4 different modes of attack, but I never bothered to learn them and just kinda dodged whatever it threw out. Engaging at medium range and being prepared to dodge makes it pretty easy. Being able to do this area melee only gives you a good summary of the difficulty. If you dodge well, learn the bosses and have a plan, you'll be fine. D5 is Junction. It's difficult. Enemies here drop Flux, which really begs some questions on what Flux is exactly. I'll save that for the Lore Keepers of Holiday to ponder. All I know is that it's a massless thing that has mass, but it's also energy. The enemies here pose some interesting challenges. Without the Amazon drones were bad in D3, there's a big enemy that spawns a pillar and shoots out projectiles every so often. The ads here are pretty annoying since they're more resistant than D3's ads, but the mini bosses and big enemies are tolerable. If you fight your way through, you get to have a boss fight. D5's boss is the Harp, and it's less of a boss and more of an encounter. You fight off waves of ads and big enemies waiting for its shield to go down. After a while, unkillable automated turrets turn on and occasionally shoot at the player. The Harp must be a V player DMC5. This encounter is kind of annoying in my opinion, but not unfair on normal difficulty. I beat it on my second attempt at the boss after a revive. I honestly find D5 overall to be harder than the Harp boss fight. D6 really isn't an area. It's where you talk to the voice in your player's head and get a special keepsake if you did a 10-pillar run. You then get to sleep in a bed and return to Diamond City through magic. I don't know the lore implications since the game isn't finished. The Shallows is D1B, an alternative starting area with more enemies and flux drops. I'm not going to go into how to unlock it, just look it up. I don't have much footage of it since I don't use it as my starting location yet. The sewer full of broken or otherwise fucked up robots. The enemies here are reskins or remixes of existing enemies. The vendor for this area is a robot named Beazle, who sells you trash items. They're quite literally trash. All of them have a monkey's paw effect and give you an upside for a downside. They're interesting, but I don't use them because of the side effects. The area boss is the Chimera. It's just 3 robotic tentacles. I don't really have much to say, and I'll refrain from tentacle jokes. It'll do melee, spawn enemies, do some ranged, pretty basic stuff. This video was originally going to be submitted for the Neon Knights Christmas contest, but I made the executive decision to delay it so I could cover Snow Day. This event comes with new gear chests from Stein, new clothing items, and a new event currency. There's also the new special dive to play, which is the event mode. The event is quite fun, even though doing it solo is annoying. At least I get to see Holiday really pissed off in a Santa hat. The event currency gained from doing the new special dive can be spent on emotes or items. I'm aiming for the Holiday sticker because I find it a little bit too funny. The dive consists of delivering different colored presents from a sled to the corresponding crates. This is a good idea in concept, but annoying solo since you can't filter what presents you pick up. You can't press a button and pick up only red presents, you just kinda have to deal with it. There are conveyor belts you can throw the presents on for easier transport though. The sled also doubles as a turret, meaning you don't have to babysit it too much. If its health hits 0, you lose the run. Failing to deliver the presents also ends the run. I just like playing the game though, so I'm biased. I'm gonna briefly mention Exp Dives. I didn't even write a script for this part, I literally forgot about it. Exp Dives are more efficient ways to grind for specifically EXP and only EXP. You get 2 Exp Dives per location and there are 2 locations available per day. There are also Flux Dives which are similar but for Flux. Exp Dives give you score based on your performance, and a letter that increases your multiplier depending on how good you're doing and if you remain unhit. If you do a room perfectly, you get a bonus. The amount of EXP you get from a room is based on your score. You get to choose a few buff items and a few Moco sodas before you begin the run. There are also vending machines within the level that increase your score multiplier for a downside. If you start doing a little bit too well, the game's just gonna throw a bunch of crap at you to try to kill you. Overall, a good way to spice up the progression, but I wish you could do more per day. In Flux Boiler dives, you have the same shtick of getting items at the beginning of it, and then progressing through a level semi-normally. The difference between Exp dives and Flux Boiler is that over time there's a heat gauge that fills up. If it gets too high, it starts burning your character, but the higher your heat gauge, the more flux enemies drop. There are also terminals you can interact with after a certain heat level to get additional flux. You can cool off the room with cooling valves or heat up the room with heating valves that are randomly scattered in rooms, and sometimes aren't even in a room. Your heat resets after every room. I find Flux Dives pretty challenging because enemies will keep you occupied for a while and build up your heat. A bit over halfway through the level, I tend to take too long in a room and then get immolated for it. Well, I guess I've covered all the bases for what's currently in the game. This video will become outdated over time, so let's think of it as a time capsule for Neon Knight's launch. It's now time for my totally objective score. I give Neon Knights a solid 8.5 out of 10. The only thing really holding it back is weapon RNG being annoying, and Exp dives being limited to twice a day. I also have some other minor nitpicks, like how chaotic dodging can be at some points. Like, Jesus man, lay off the roulette wheels and trendsetters in Vertigo Highrise. I feel like the base movement speed could be higher, with basic spacebar dodges more impactful and possibly giving iframes, but that's my personal opinion. I just like to dodge in melee rush, so that might prove overpowered when someone actually uses bullets. Game's soundtrack so far is a banger, even if the BGM for levels and bosses is the same and starts to get repetitive after a while. I tend to drown it out with the songs used in this video anyways. Title screen will always be a banger though. The lore is lacking on release, but it's been stated that it will be expanded. I'm excited to see where it's gonna go. If the script for this video sounds kinda rushed and is shorter than usual, it's because it was written in a fraction of the time the Arcane Reborn video took, and it's an incorrect review instead of a summary. Not a lot of story to summarize, and it would needlessly weigh down the video. Still an average script, and better than my first draft. I don't really know how to end the video, so bye.